Hello, everyone. It's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 11th day of December 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, has this weather graphic. I hope it comes up here. And let's see. There we go. We've got in the interior there, the Fairbanks area, the greater Fairbanks area, winter weather advisory also into Tanana, Central Interior, Koyukuk Valley, Upper Yukon Valley, winter weather advisory. That's for not new snow, but for blowing snow as the winds are in the increase, already starting to increase now, continue to increase and be quite breezy through the weekend, especially higher elevations. Looking for gusts anywhere from 30 to 40, maybe even high as 45 miles an hour in some of the normally windier areas there. That'll create blowing snow. It could reduce visibilities down to half a mile or less at times. Also, winter weather advisories are out for the Arctic coast for the same sort of reason there, mostly blowing snow and gusty east-northeast winds, and that'll continue tonight into tomorrow and probably even tomorrow night. And otherwise, for the remainder of the state, no watches, warnings, or advisories are out. So moving on to satellite imagery here, you can see a pretty good storm system there lifting northward, the low center, approaching the Alaska Peninsula there at the front, having made landfall along the peninsula earlier today and is now north of the western side there and kind of wrapped back in around the Fox Islands there. But precipitation, as you can see, heavier clouds, or at least whiter clouds, higher tops showing up there around the Pribilofs. They only had a few hundredths of an inch, both at St. Paul and St. George in the last 12 hours. And about a third of an inch of precipitation fell at Unalaska, and that was rain earlier, and that's changed over to snow now. Temperatures falling toward the mid-30s. And front pushing some moisture up into Kodiak Island. They've had about 5/100ths of an inch there, so not a real big rain producer, at least as far as Kodiak Island goes. Probably heavier amounts down on the southwest side or towards Sitkinak, but just 5/100ths of an inch in the last 12 hours, Kodiak State Airport. And some moisture, but nothing heavy there in over the Bristol Bay area and then up along the southwest coast. A lot of clouds, but some areas of light snow, but again, amounts very light. Interior areas basically dry, with the Panhandle though seeing some moisture, especially over the northern southeast coast. Picking up snow today, 1 to 2 inches possibly around Juneau, reporting light snow at least all afternoon there. And then over toward Gustavus, about 1,500ths of rain and snow. And temperatures Juneau in the lower 30s, so it's kind of a wet snow there. And probably not much at all elsewhere. In fact, it's pretty dry down the remainder of the southeast coast, and you get into some clearing there as you head farther south down toward Dixon Entrance. Otherwise, up on the Arctic coast, you can see some clouds moving from kind of east-southeast to west-northwest there in the area. And again, maybe some light flurries in that, but nothing heavy at all. And showery conditions with clearing, looks like for AKwx. Could have seen some sunshine today all the way out to Attu. And for the chart today, you can see the gradient starting to tighten up. We've got that Arctic high up over the Arctic Ocean there, about 1,044 millibars or so in the pressure. Not so much wind, although starting to pick up a little bit on the eastern Arctic coast there. I think 30, 35 miles an hour out of the east, and also on the west side there. And that'll continue to tighten. That's what's prompted the winter weather advisories up in that area and over the interior as well. A little bit of light snow, but nothing heavy at all there in the where I've got it shaded in, and some clouds, but generally the remainder of the interior, pretty good. A little bit of moisture trying to sneak up to the North Gulf Coast there, and more so for Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula areas. And actually precipitation a little more widespread than what it actually is. Definitely out over the western Aleutians. Got that a little too painted in there with all the clearing they had for Adak and out toward Shimia that showed up in the satellite today. And for tonight, that low that was continues to pull northward there, that was, let me back one up there, south of the Alaska Peninsula, coming northward today, pulls northward, weakens about 10 millibars by, say, 3 a.m. Saturday morning there as it crosses the western Alaska Peninsula. Enough gradient, though, could see gusts 40, 45 miles an hour, places like Pilot Point, Port Hayden, possibly out of the south and southeast. Rain and snow along the peninsula. And along and mostly behind that occluded front, be a mixture of precipitation, gusty winds pushing up into Kamishak Bay. Chance of snow into southern Cook Inlet, portions of the Kenai Peninsula, maybe Prince William Sound, or mixed precipitation. And over the interior, tightening gradient there, especially north of the Alaska Range and south of the Brooks Range. So winds are on the increase. Already today, gusting to about 20, have come up to 25 miles an hour at Indian Mountain. And so it's the higher elevations to see the strongest winds. But blowing snow and the winter weather advisories out for those areas. And that high in the Arctic now up to 1,050 millibars, shaded red because that's at the top of the altimeter. It's the top of the altimeter, 31 inches is of mercury would be the other unit that would be used. Otherwise, rain and snow showers, breezy out over the western Aleutians. And still a chance of some light moisture, form of rain, call it for the central coast of the Panhandle, maybe some lingering snow showers, northern Panhandle, mixture precipitation, or just snow over toward Yakutat, but nothing heavy at all. And for the first day of the weekend, looking like this, again, more lines on the map there across the interior, on into the Yukon and even the northern Panhandle, as pressures stay low there with the lows in the Bering Sea, and then that even stronger system making the scene there on the well south of the Gulf of Alaska. Pretty good gradient with that, and that's going to keep the easterly flow and chance of moisture there, rain or snow into Kodiak Island, and some of that again all as far north as southern Cook Inlet, maybe into western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, and then from Port Moller or Kachemak Bay on into Kamishak Bay could see some light snow. But definitely windier conditions over all of interior Alaska, south of the Brooks Range, and not so much. Northern Bering Sea seeing an increase in the winds as well, with gales for St. Lawrence Island and the southwest coast, and then actually storm warnings there south of Nunivak Island for tomorrow. And for Sunday, again, very tight gradient for pretty gusty winds. Could see winds anywhere 30 to 50 miles an hour there from the eastern interior, especially the higher elevations, west-northwest, right up to the western Arctic coast there. Cape Lisburn could see 60 mile an hour wind gusts with that gradient, though how steep it is, but it it's not very extensive. About let's say Wainwright on over to the central and east side, not much gradient at all there, so winds will be lighter. North slope will be a little breezy, but not too terribly strong on the winds. And that front pushing up moisture into the Panhandle, look for a moderate to heavy rain coming into Prince of Wales Island, and a mixture of precipitation starting out as snow over the inland area, especially farther north you are, or any elevation over toward the border. But the northern Panhandle, those strong northeast outflow winds should stay dry and mostly clear, definitely chillier, and strong winds there along the eastern Alaska Range. A little breezy in the Copper River Basin, but the eastern Tanana Valley and all that interior area will be quite windy, say 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts out of the east. Light snow possible along the southwest coast with the remnants of that frontal boundary that weakens into a trough on into Bristol Bay, St. Lawrence Island, chance of snow. Couple of lows, keep snow showers in the forecast for the Pribilofs and much of the Bering Sea. Scattered isolated rain or snow showers for the Fox Islands and the Aleutians. You can see kind of in a slot there and get into the clearing there with some weak ridging out over the western Aleutians. So moving on to lows for tonight, well below zero over the interior, north of the Alaska Range, anywhere from 15 to 30 below, and 5 to 15 below for the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin. Single numbers, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, to mid-30s, Kodiak Island, mid-upper 30s, Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s, Aleutians, lower 30s for the Pribilofs, lower 20s, Northern Panhandle, lower to mid-30s to the south, and highs tomorrow. Below zero, north of the Alaska Range to the Arctic coast, but not too far below, and single numbers in the Susitna Valley to upper teens, northern Cook Inlet to mid-30s down toward the Homer Seldovia area, mid-30s for Seward, and near 30, northern Panhandle, lower 40s south, near 40, upper 30s, lower 40s, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, followed by lows on Sunday morning. Call it 15 to 25 below. Some areas could be colder, especially over toward Eagle there, down to Northway and Tok, near 25 or 25, 27, 28, maybe even 30 below in some areas. Otherwise, teens, northern Panhandle, lower 30s south, and single numbers in the Susitna Valley, mid-20s, Kenai Peninsula, 30s out west, highs near zero over the northern interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Saturday morning. Pretty good VFR through much of interior Alaska, although increasing marginal VFR with some areas of IFR across southern Alaska from the Auckland Mountains there to Kamishak Bay and Iliamna, eastern Iliamna Lake. Western Seward Peninsula, Passage Canal, possibly spilling into far eastern Turnagain Arm there, and maybe into Resurrection Bay. With marginal VFR eastward along the North Gulf Coast, IFR northern panhandle, some VFR down to the south, and a chunk of IFR there off the southwest coast, right on top of the Pribilofs with a branch extending down to the Alaska Peninsula. Afternoon, that area is just marginal now from the Alaska Peninsula all the way out to Shimianatu. Pribilofs right there on the southern edge of the IFR field with IFR up Nunivak Island, eastern St. Lawrence Island, and mostly off the coast of the Yukon Delta with some marginal VFR pushing in a little ways inland. VFR in the interior, some marginal VFR along and south of the Alaska Range, which gets a little more widespread as you get down toward the Prince William Sound area and the North Gulf Coast, with some IFR now in western Prince William Sound and Passage Canal. Kodiak Island, IFR on the east side, and Kamishak Bay, and also over the Southwest Mountains. Panhandle VFR. VFR day again, or VFR holds through Saturday night into Sunday morning for the southeast coast. Marginal VFR right along the, or just off the Prince of Wales Island coast. VFR in the interior, some lower stuff possible there north of the eastern Alaska Range from Northway Toke up across Chicken to maybe Eagle, possibly. But definitely better chance out toward the southwest. There was some IFR making its way inland from Togiak Bay, Dillingham, and also the Yukon, part of the Kuskokwim Delta, and St. Lawrence Island. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Aleutians and Bering Sea, and marginal VFR, southern and eastern Kodiak Island, Kachemak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, up the western Cook Inlet there, eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. And then for the afternoon Sunday, marginal VFR spreads up across the southern panhandle, but not quite making it to Elephant Cove. VFR for Yakutat, Cordova, marginal VFR in Prince William Sound, southern eastern Kenai Peninsula. Cook Inlet stays mostly VFR, except for extreme southern Cook Inlet with Kachemak and Kamishak Bays marginal. VFR in the interior all the way to the Arctic coast. Passes Anatuvik. I split the difference here. Marginal for Anatuvik, VFR for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, rainy, same forecast. A VFR kind of day again for Windy, and Isabel, though, might be marginal. And then Mintasta, marginal VFR, northern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Tanita, I went in the eastern entrance with some marginal VFR. It'd be the best chance, or that'd be the area with the lowest conditions. And for Portage, marginal, especially on the east side. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels for tomorrow, surface along the North Gulf Coast, cutting across the Panhandle, 2,000 feet in across Kodiak, Bristol Bay, and just off the north coast of the southeast coast. Icing, could be some areas of considerable moderate there, slipping up across Kodiak Island and in toward Kamishak Bay and the southwest mountains there. And then another widespread area of possible elevated icing potential of mostly the light rime or mixed variety there for the Aleutians and across the Bering Sea. Jet stream showing west-northwest flow about 60 to 85 knots there with the upper level ridge over the northern Bering Strait or the Russian Far East. And then southerlies, of course, warmer air with that, 100 knots right across the Alaska Peninsula, and kind of splits there, taking off to the east over the northern Bering Sea at 70 knots, and then kind of cutting across the Alaska Range at a much lower speed. 9,000 feet, we're looking at some pretty good winds, 50 to 55 knots from the south, Bristol Bay, turning east there, right over Nunivak Island and across the northern Bering Sea. And then just south of the Aleutians, westerlies 35 to 45, light winds for the Panhandle and interior Alaska, and 3,000 feet, 65 knotters there along the southwest coast, and 55 knot easterlies over the Selawik Valley area. Turbulence, widespread moderate chop there all along the west coast, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, into the central interior, and the western Arctic coast all look moderately choppy, and west of Amchitka Island, moderate chop there for the western Aleutians, and along and off the southeast coast, looks occasionally moderate turbulence below 4,000 to 6,000 feet. Light to light to isolated moderate for southern Alaska. After the break, I'll be back with a marine forecast.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific garbage patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, of course, Point Barrow eastward, solid ice, and then some thinner stuff right and just off the west side there. But notice the area east-southeast of Wrangell Island starting to fill in with heavier ice now, as well as on down toward the Bering Strait. And that might close off, the strait could close off this weekend. And moving on to coastal water forecast, gale warnings on the south coast of the Panhandle, east winds 35 knots, seas up to 15 feet. Small craft advisories on the north coast, east 25 to 30 knots, seas 10 to 11 feet. And for Clarence Strait, southeast 20, seas 4 feet. Northerly winds hold on to the central and northern inside waters. Small craft advisory level northerly winds, 25 knots for Stevens Passage, and 30 knots for Lynn Canal with 5-foot seas. Sunday, big increase in the winds from 30 to 40 knots there for Lynn Canal, gale warnings, and 8-foot seas. Small craft advisories northeast 25, Stevens Passage, southeast 20 for Clarence Strait, seas 5 feet. Along the south coast, south to southeast, 40 to 45 knots, seas near 25 feet. 40 knots on the central coast out of the east, 22-foot seas, and small craft advisories, 30-knot easterly winds with seas just under 20 feet for the north coast. Prince William Sound, northeast 20, seas 4 feet for the day Saturday, and easterly winds 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast, 12 to 13-foot seas. Gale warnings, Barren Islands, east 35 knots, 14-foot seas, and northeast 40 knots for Kamishak Bay, and seas at about 17 feet. Gale warning Southern Cook Inlet, northeast sustained 35 knots, 25 knots, good for small craft advisories. Northern Cook Inlet, seas at about 9 feet. For Sunday, Northern Cook Inlet, northeast 20, 6-foot seas. Small craft advisories, northeast 30 for the area south of the Forelands there in Cook Inlet, right on down to Kamishak Bay. Gales continue for the Barren Islands out of the east at 35 knots. North Gulf Coast, east winds 30 knots, 18-foot seas, northeast 15 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, east side, east winds 30 knots, 15-foot seas. Shelikof Strait, northeast at 30 knots, 12-foot seas. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southeast 25, seas at 18 feet, and Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, southwest at 30 knots with seas at about 18 feet, and then south 30 knots for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. But Bristol Bay, east sustained 45 knots, 9-foot seas. And for Sunday, northeast 25 knots, small craft advisories for coming down from the gales for Bristol Bay, 25 out of the northeast. Northwest 20, there, west-northwest 20 knots, the Alaska Peninsula. Northeast 25, though, Castle Cape to Sitkinak. East 30 for the east side of Kodiak, Fognak Island, and northeast 30 for Shelikof Strait. Fox Islands, both on Alaska and Unmak, looking at westerlies 25 to 30 knots, seas 10 to 16 feet. West 30 knots for Adak and Atka, as well as Amchitka. For Kiska, shimmy in at 2, gale warnings, east west 35 knots, seas 16 feet. Those are all westerly winds. And for the western Aleutians on Sunday, shimmy at 2 to Kiska, northeast 25, Amchitka, Adak, and Atka, west winds 30 knots, and 25 knot westerly winds for Unmak Island, seas 13 feet. On Alaska Island, 9 to 10 foot seas with a west wind at 20 knots. Storm warnings on the Kuskokwim Delta coast south of Nunivak Island for east winds sustained at 50 knots tomorrow. Otherwise, for the Pribilofs, small craft advisories, northeast 25, 13-foot seas. Gale warnings everywhere else. East 35 knots for the St. Matthew Island waters, the Yukon Delta coast. 40 knots out of the east for St. Lawrence Island, and northeast 35 knots, Norton Sound. For Sunday, northeast winds 30 knots for Norton Sound. Gales out of the east 35 for St. Lawrence Island. Lighter winds Sunday than Saturday for the other areas. Northeast 35, Yukon Delta coast to St. Matthew Island. Northeast 25, Kuskokwim Delta coast. Just 10 knots for the Pribilofs. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast, gales are flying tomorrow for east winds at 35 knots and 30 knots out of the northeast on the central coast. So we got brisk wind advisories for the central and western Arctic coast and gale warnings from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales for northeast winds at 35 knots. Those even get stronger on Sunday. East 45 knots, Wales to Cape Beaufort sustained, and gale warnings on the western Arctic coast there at 35 out of the east, and then northeast winds mostly at 25 knots for the central and east side. And for tonight, high pressure in the Arctic there, pretty strong, 1,050 millibars. That's what's gonna kick the winds up with the lows down to the south, tightening pressure gradient across the state, as you can see here as we roll into tomorrow, but mostly dry, mostly clear, chance of moisture along the south coast and the southwest coast. And for Sunday, tighter gradient, more wind over the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.